I will. Thank you. Mwah. Thanks for letting me do this. Totally ran out of time last time, and I kind of figured that I wouldn't be able to get through all of these, but we only made it through two. So we'll see how it goes today. Might need another week or another presentation, which is always good for me. I love to stay in recovery because I'm a sick person, and I can prove it. Okay, let's see what we have here today. Okay. We are up to compliance patterns. Now, here's the deal. If you have anything to share on these, please, you are welcome to drop on in at any time. I'm going to share what I think I know about these, but there are some of these that I didn't really relate to. So I'm looking to your experience to help me out with this. So compliance. I think the one that pretty much got everybody into CODA, I'm going to say that this might be universal, are extremely loyal, remaining in harmful situations too long. I don't think there's any codependent that cannot identify with that. But, I could be wrong. So for me, we got a bunch of people coming in. Fantastic. Okay, so I kept hoping for a change, thinking if I do this, they will do that. Simple, because as long as I feel like I have control over the situation, I can manipulate people into doing what I think will make me feel good. It wasn't about them, it wasn't about the relationship, it was about me feeling good for that particular moment. That changed a lot, but at that particular moment, I could make me be happy. Okay, God, that sounds awful. So, for example, if I have dinner on the table at 5, then he'll probably come home at 5 and have dinner instead of go to the bar. Yeah, let's try that. That sort of thinking, it did not work out for me ever. This helps me think I have control over the situation. I want to bring the relationship back to what it was in the beginning, not realizing I had only met this person's representative. That's the person they wanted me to think they were. I introduced my representative as well. And then when I started becoming who I actually was, things fell apart rapidly because all of a sudden I wasn't patient and tolerant anymore. I wanted things my way. The beginning of the relationship was between two people that actually don't exist. The person I presented myself to be was not the real person at all. Well, okay, maybe a smidgen, but generally speaking, it wasn't me at all. If you would like to raise your hand, interject anything, ask a question, push back on anything I'm saying, these are my opinions only. Just raise your little virtual hand so I can see you and call on you. All the times I thought that I'm putting in 110% on this relationship and you're putting in nothing. Why didn't that ever red flag me? Why did I ever go, gosh, maybe it's time to get out of this relationship or go work on yourself or sober up or do something other than what you're doing. But yeah, the loyalty, it's not about being honorable. There's nothing noble about that. It was just a control maneuver to keep me in the relationship. That's all. It's a bad relationship, but it is a relationship. So, I don't have to worry about going and finding somebody new. So there my laziness steps up and says, you're right. Okay. Compromise their own values and integrity to avoid rejection and anger. Yeah, this was the safer way to do things, honestly. And I learned this at home. And when I was a child, you don't have an opinion, period. I mean, God help you if you had an opinion and if you expressed it, now we've got trouble. There was either physical violence or verbal abuse. And so we just, I learned really, really early not to have an opinion. So now that I'm an adult, I carried that right through. And anybody who was attractive, this is so weird, but anybody who was physically attractive, I somehow gave their opinions more weight than people who I thought were unattractive. I don't know why that is. Just me and the most attractive person in the room was always a problem. So how many times have you gone to a movie you didn't want to see just to appease somebody? How many restaurants have you eaten in? How many hunting trips have you gone on? I went on hunting trips. Come on. I don't really like camping. It's dirty. There's bees and bugs and all kinds of things out there. So I don't really care for it. I don't hate it, but I would go anyway and swear I had a great time. If you ask me, we had such a wonderful time. Yeah, that's not true. But it had to be true, or I might risk the relationship. This is the only reason for that. This compliance was very important to me. If I just don't do anything, then the relationship can continue. Unless I had to do something else, like avoid something or control something, whatever I had to do at the time. Always changing, always changing. If anybody, I don't monitor the chats necessarily. So if anybody has a question for me, well, one of the facilitators, please let me know. Okay, let's see. Are hypervigilant regarding the feelings of others and take on those feelings. I didn't realize I was doing this. I didn't really realize that I was taking on other people's feelings, but if my parents came home angry, then we would either scatter. If we were smart enough to scatter, then, we didn't have to do anything. Avoidance is the key. But if we were stuck in the room and they were angry, we had to take on that anger as well. If my boyfriend came home angry, I'd get angry with him and take on his feelings. Those sons of so-and-so's, how dare they treat you like that? Even if I didn't understand the situation. I wasn't in the room when any of this stuff happened. Yeah, these patterns are amazing because I did not know this stuff about myself. I did know that I was scared a lot when I actually thought I was just angry, but I didn't realize how scared I was. But the hypervigilant thing, it's like the cowboy movies where they throw their hat into the bar first to see if anybody shoots at it. You just check out the room first. I'd never said anything first. I'm going to wait and see how you're doing, and then I'll go ahead and match your mood, happy, sad, depressed, whatever, because I didn't really have my own entity. I wasn't really a person per se, not in my own right anyway. I would go ahead and join you, whatever you were doing. And it's that stand by your man. If you come home mad, I'll join in and cuss out the person you're mad at, even if I think you're wrong, okay? Even if I think you're wrong. My job is to support you. Stand by your man. That was the most codependent song ever written. Stand by Your Man by Tammy Wynette. No matter what, you stand by your man. And she was getting beaten by hers when she wrote that song. So, can't really use her word on this, but I certainly did. I thought it was noble to just suck it up, buttercup, and keep on moving forward. At all costs, don't risk losing the relationship. Are afraid to express their beliefs, opinions, and feelings when they differ from those of others. I learned early on not to state an opinion until I evaluated the room. I didn't want to get that. I didn't always get that right. And I would either be yelled at or bullied or ridiculed. Worse, I might make them see me differently if I disagreed. It might poke a hole in my representative facade. That all together look, if somebody pokes a hole in that mask, that's very dangerous. And that really signaled to me that it was time to move on. So that's how I did things. Much easier. Yeah, my representative was important. Since I've already mentioned, I didn't have my own entity. I didn't have my own person. So I was taking on everybody else's. And that was a full-time job because if you got in a group of people that disagreed with each other, that's the only time I would go silent because I didn't want to piss off one of the sides, so I just didn't take one. Okay, and here's my personal favorite. Accept sexual attention when they want love. This is a particularly troubling area for me. After years of abuse as a child, sex wasn't a special gift that you give to someone you care about or an act of intimacy between people who care about each other. I just used it to attract and hold attention, thinking that would turn to love. And this was my honest feeling about this. I can attract them with sex, but then it will turn into love. And then they will treat me with respect, like the women you see in church that are all proper and all that stuff. I had this weird ideal about that's who I wanted to be. This couldn't be further from the truth. But I felt like if I could mimic them, then I would be respected. When, if I do this, they will do that. Worse yet, if they see me differently, wow, because they're going to single me out. They're going to figure me out and single me out. I used sex to end a date one time. I was tired. I wanted to go home. I knew what he wanted. I said, oh, screw it. Just go ahead, do it, and be done with this thing. Because I was tired. And it didn't mean anything to me. This was not an act of intimacy or love for me. It was just something, it was more of a performance art. I call it showtime, jazz hands showtime. And that it wasn't about me. It was about my partner, always. Okay, make decisions without regard to the consequences. I used to make snap decisions just to prove I could make a decision. It was a matter of pride for me when people say, oh, that was easy. And yeah, I didn't think about it. I judged the room already, and I figured what the answer should be, gave them that answer. Everybody's happy. And I get validated, and I don't get thrown out of the club. So, it's easy. When actually it's a full-time gig, but it is pretty easy to just be whoever they want you to be. And you get pretty good at it after a while, at least I did. Give up their truth to gain the approval of others or to avoid change. Yeah, I don't, if I had one, didn't matter ever. I don't remember asking myself, what do I think about this? What do I want? What do I need here? What do I? My needs and wants were at the bottom of the list. At the absolute bottom of the list. They just did not matter. And so with that, it was easy to give up my truth. I didn't have any truth. It was whatever you thought, whatever you think. Unless I was feeling like I was in control mode. I had two different methods of operation. One, I was making you the higher power, so then I didn't have my own truth and my own personality. Then the other side, I was being the higher power in the relationship and dragging somebody behind me, either financially or sexually or whatever. And then I was in charge. That was a whole different persona. So I'd switch between the two. And speaking of that, we are on control patterns. Yeah, compliance is simple. It's lazy. You don't have to do anything. Just be in the room and try to fit in. Trying to fit in, it's, the quieter you are, the better you are, I think. Okay. Control patterns. Codependents often believe people are incapable of taking care of themselves. When I was playing God in the relationship, this is what I believed. Made me feel superior. When others asked for my counsel, I could clearly see what their problem was and how they could solve it. If they needed financial help, it was it made me feel good that I actually had more than somebody else had for a change. And so I would give them everything they needed and more. Don't worry about the rent. You go through school. I'll pay it while you're in there. Well, gosh, what happened when he graduated? Bye-bye. It shocked me. And looking back on it, I can't believe I got shocked by that, but I don't get shocked much anymore, thankfully. Attempt to convince others what to think, do, or feel. I helped run other people's lives, so I didn't have to look at my own. And I never took my own advice, hence the title of this workshop. I could give great advice to other people. I had all the stuff you needed, but I could not turn that mirror in on myself for whatever reason. And, it didn't work in my favor. I actually lost relationship after relationship and could not figure out why. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Okay, here we go. Freely offer advice and direction without being asked. This became crystal clear to me when I thought I was being helpful. I was being overly, aggressively helpful with everybody because they needed my help. Obviously, I could see that they needed my help. And gosh, I'm not going to, disregard somebody that needs my help. But I was told unsolicited advice equals criticism every time. And I immediately poo-pooed the notion, I always poo-poo it first until I take a look at it. I thought, well, that's not true. And then I started thinking about it. If I give unsolicited advice, I'm basically telling that person they're not smart enough to figure this out on their own. It's being aggressively helpful, and it is rarely appreciated. It is rarely appreciated. I found that out. This happens to me, and I've been the pitcher and the catcher. I've given it out and I've taken it in. And so, yeah, I can recognize it now. And that words, if you start a sentence with the words "you should," or if somebody starts a sentence to you with the two words "you should," just la 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 the rest of it and mentally fill in the blank with "be more like me," because they're using their own history to offer you advice. They're not using yours, they're using theirs. This is what I know about this, so this is what you should do. And that's what I did with other people. Using my history, I would tell them how to run their life. My idea of happiness should be their idea of happiness. Doesn't work like that. Found that out the hard way as well. I find everything out the hard way. Unsolicited advice equals criticism. No question about it. And then I would become resentful when others declined my help or rejected my advice. Well, if they're going through all this trouble to ask my opinion, why aren't they taking my advice? Why aren't they doing exactly what I prescribed for them, which is the correct thing to do, by the way, because I know everything. I didn't realize I was being used as a sounding board. There are ruminators that do not want a solution. They want an outlet, and anyone will do. Once you draw a boundary on a ruminator, they'll find a new victim. Don't worry about that. They're not going to drop off the edge if you won't listen to them anymore. They will find someone else. It's 100% on that one. So don't get stuck. Ruminators are the people that constantly talk about the same problem over and over and over. There's no recovery there. There's no solution. They don't want to talk about the solution necessarily. They just want to talk about the problem. My sponsor was really great about this. She said, I'm going to give you 1 minute to talk about the problem, and then we'll talk about the solution. Wow. Okay. So I learned to condense that stuff, man. And by doing that, I got to the heart of the matter easier. I got to what was really important in the situation. Got into a one sentence, here's the problem, rather than a diatribe or a novel. And that actually helped my recovery because I could, breaks it down a little bit more. You don't need all the fluff and the excess sentence and what they were wearing at the time. You don't need all that. Just tell them the actual, this is what I think the problem is. And it never was, but that's a different story. Lavish gifts and favors on those they want to influence. I haven't really had a whole lot of money in my life, but when I do have money, I use it. Outrageous for them to have control over something you gave them. I mean, my goodness, that's just ridiculous. I used to have the best potluck dish. And I learned this, when I was a kid, I learned this absolutely. This lavish gifts thing is highly controlled. It's a control maneuver, and it's a manipulation. I used to give people what I wanted them to have. One of my favorite gifts is a mattress that I gave my prospective husband because his was crap. So for his birthday, I gave him a mattress because I'm sleeping on it too. Okay. And he didn't like it at all. And he was upset that I threw the other one out. And I'm like, wow, you're selfish. You're not a nice person. No, he just, I got a lot of nerve. Now I did practice a Kona move one time, and this was fairly early in my recovery. And I'm still proud of this. My sister gave me a sweater it's a beautiful sweater. Cost $60. It was nice ribbing and all that stuff, but it's form-fitting, and I don't wear form-fitting things. I don't really have a waist. She does. And so I would never wear this, but I didn't really know how to tell her. Of course, I thanked her profusely because my mom said, if somebody gives you a gift, you thank them profusely. Okay. So I thanked her like it was the best thing I'd ever received, but I was never going to wear it. And she asked me one time how come I hadn't worn it. And I just, blah, 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 whatever I said. And I finally boxed it up and I asked her if she would accept this back, because I told her, I honestly, this is not my style. I don't wear form-fitted things and I love it. And I know it cost a lot of money. I would rather you have it than me just let it sit in my drawer. Is that okay with you? And she initially, of course, very upset. And, that first thing she said, that cost a lot of money. Yes, money is always the thing. But I said, I honestly, I will not wear it. And I want you to have it because this will look good on you. And she thought about it for a blink of an eye. Oh, good heavens, it's snowing. Sorry, it's snowing right now. That's so cool. Okay. She thought about it for a split second and then she said, thank you. I said, you're welcome. The end. But that was hard. That was scary. Okay. That was really, really scary because what if she tells mom, that was, but I did it. And that was one of my proudest moments because I'm just not that brave normally, especially with my sister, my perfect, thinner, smarter sister. So mine had to be the best potluck dish or at least the most elaborate. I had to bring the most interesting gift to the Christmas gift exchange, always going over the dollar limit that had been established. So I would be thanked profusely. I never got thanked quite enough, though. Yeah, this is a tricky one. I mean, it's easy to do. It's, if I'm trying to get somebody's attention or try to get attention for myself, validating and all that stuff, best thing to do is get the biggest present and the biggest, and the fanciest bows and all that, go overboard so that I would be noticed as being generous. That's my only motivation. Also, you get invited to more parties where there's gifts involved if you get good gifts. So there's that. But there are two motivations for giving a gift. It's either love or fear. If you truly want somebody to feel good and you send them flowers when they're in the hospital, that's love. If you're afraid if you don't send flowers when they're in the hospital, you're going to lose a promotion, that's fear. Okay. So it's actually a lot easier for me now not to get those two confused. Here we come with sex again. There we go. Used sexual attention to gain approval and acceptance. And this is what it was for me. It wasn't that I was physically attractive unless I was drunk. If I was drunk, I was easily physically attracted to really anybody who was attracted to me or said hi. I approached men with sex thinking that love would naturally follow. And then I would be treated like a lady. See, then I would get, if I do this, then they will do that. Its sex wasn't special or intimate. It was just showtime, and that's all it was. That's unfortunate, but and I got introduced to sex way too early by my stepdad, and so it wasn't all it did. All it did for me was I realized that I could gain his attention, or at least have his attention. Something, I don't know, some twisted sort of a thing. Of course, all of those relationships have to feel needed in order to have a relationship with others. That's a nice one. That's a lot of low self-esteem as well. I feel more secure when I'm needed, especially financially. It didn't really matter what was needed. I would find it and provide it. Money, sex, a sympathetic ear. These were all just getting my foot in the door. Just establishing myself in that person's life. And then I could work on the rest later. The rest would naturally follow. That's not true. But somehow it seemed true to me. And I was always confused. Why do I keep losing these relationships? It was really because once I had fulfilled what they needed, they didn't need me anymore. And they would go out and find Mrs. Right and shove me aside. Demand that their needs be met by others. When I wasn't playing God, I was trying to latch onto someone else, similar to a barnacle. In this case, I would stay way longer than I should have, but I didn't want to leave. If I was being taken care of, I could put up with a lot. It's amazing what you can get used to. I love that expression. But yeah, I tolerated a lot of things because I didn't want to start another relationship. it's not so much fear, it's laziness. I didn't want to go find somebody else and support myself. But now here's the thing, when I was in the workforce before computers came along and all that stuff, I'm 67 years old, it's been a while. I had my own apartment, I had all my own stuff, and I was on an entry-level position, but I could live alone, pay my rent, make a car payment, all that stuff. Things have changed now. Things are different. There's a different dynamic. You can't do that anymore. Well, it's harder to do that now, but then I could support myself. So I could leave a relationship just like that and be fine and land back on my feet. So I feel sorry for people nowadays. They probably feel stuck, or trapped. Use charm and charisma to convince others of their capacity to be caring and compassionate. Sure. I think this is why I like drama so much in school. I was good at playing a role that wasn't me. Coda taught me to just be one person instead of many. There's something in, I forget where it is in Coda, where it talks about being a whole person. And I consider that whole as opposed to being fragmented, being one thing to one person, another thing to another person, somebody else to another person. It would matter what I wore, language I used, all that. It's different for each person. And there's always going to be a little bit of that, I would imagine. But that was all the time for me. Yeah, in spite of what the flare-up that you just saw when I get angry, and I have a flare-up or something, which I only have about once a year now. But then I go in and use charm and charisma. That's not really me. Okay, yeah, it is, because that's the way I just behave. There's still a little bit of things that I need to learn and stuff. Not perfect. Yeah, it's easier to spot somebody now who is using charm and charisma because that's their representative. And it takes about 90 days for people to get comfortable enough around you to drop the facade. That's when you do the recheck for red flags, because you might have now that they're not using their best behavior anymore, that's when you really need to look. Don't get fooled. Yeah, the charm and charisma part, that is gaslighting. I want you to think I'm somebody other than who I am. When I try to put on a mood that I'm not in. I woke up angry this morning. I had a terrible dream. Okay, now what's my problem? I had to think about it for a while and come back to center so that I could be who I really am. I'm not that dream. It has nothing to do with real life, but I had kind of a dream hangover. So I thought, okay, well, I can let that bother me all day, or I could be Karen. So I try to be Karen all the time. I think I am. So think I'm doing well with that. We'll find out. 90 days. And then if charm and charisma didn't work, I would use blame and shame to exploit others emotionally. And I tried not to use the dark arts, but I would if I felt like I had to, whatever was necessary at the time. And I definitely did not take responsibility for anything. Nothing was my fault. So I used a lot of blame. I don't think I tried to shame people, but I might have in the process, people that I was angry at, and they were supposed to recognize that they had done me wrong or something, or I felt like they owed me an apology. I might try to shame them. Refuse to cooperate, compromise, or negotiate. Wow. Once I decided I was right, I dug in. I would not be swayed. If at some point I realized I was wrong, I would dig in harder or end the conversation so I wouldn't look stupid. That old, well, I don't want to talk about that anymore, right? Not looking stupid was crucial for me. Goes back to being sandwiched between two smarter, thinner sisters. I was never the smart one, never the thin one. So I had to appear, in my mind, I had to appear that I was right. So I would go to pretty big lengths to prove it. And it was ridiculous, stupid things. If I was wrong and I realized it, I would really dig in. Damn it, I'm right, and that's the end of it. Ugh, stupid, waste of time. Adopt an attitude of indifference, helplessness, authority, or rage to manipulate outcomes. Yeah, whatever I thought would work. Indifference, sure. Helplessness, and crying, yes, helpless if I'd start crying, if I thought it would work. Again, I was in drama in school. I had a speech impediment. I used to stutter a lot. when I was nervous. And so my mom took me to a speech therapist, and the speech therapist said, put her in drama. And I thought I was being punished. I really did. I thought I was being punished because here I am on stage, all these people staring at me. And I came to really, really enjoy that. I came to enjoy being someone else for a change. So I really kind of excelled at that, and I liked it a lot. But it gave me a lot of useless tools as well. I could play act. I could pretend I was happy, pretend I was in love, pretend, whatever I needed to do at that time. Rage, authority, manipulating outcomes was the way of us. Manipulation seemed to come fairly easy to me, even though I didn't see it that way. I was just getting my needs met, that's all. The end justifies the means. If this is what I have to do to create this result, because that's what I think I want, then that's what I'm going to do. Well, I'm so glad I don't have to live like that anymore. Man, that's a full-time job. Use recovery jargon in an attempt to control the behavior of others, and also to claim authority. I found out I really had to watch this closely when I became a sponsor, because it's a great opportunity to practice your patterns. I always used to tell everybody what to do with their life. Now it's sort of, I've taken on a role of that in a sense. So my sponsor had to remind me a couple of times, all you're doing is laying the tools at their feet. That's all. You're not going to tell them how to run their life. You're not going to do anything like that. You could give them your experience, and what they do with that is up to them. And I thought, well, man, that's kind of short-sheeting me. I have so many great ideas. And she said, and I'll repeat this, I say it every time. She said, Karen, that when you come up with a really good idea, just do the opposite and you should be okay. That's really good advice. And I will tell you very briefly that I almost remarried my husband because he brought out the Bible and told me that I couldn't marry anybody else, but I could remarry him according to the Bible. And there it was, in black and white. Okay, one more real quick. Pretend to agree with others to get what they want. Duh. Duh. I mean, I was too afraid to disagree. I remember the repercussions clearly from my childhood, and it brought that fear forward. So if anybody has anything to say on that real quick, other than that, we're going to dance for a little bit and then talk about avoidance, my personal favorite. There we are. Okay. Act in ways that invite others to reject, shame, or express anger toward them. The key word in that phrase is act. If I'm acting like something, I'm not being me. And me is good enough. Oddly, this is so strange. Usually when I'm in a pickle where I don't know what to do, all I have to do is nothing and everything's good. Hello, kitty. Okay. I don't have a pet of my own, so I vicariously live through other pet owners without the bills. And so if I'm not being myself, that means I'm acting like something. I'm acting as if. I'm acting like I'm happy. I'm acting like I'm enjoying myself. I'm acting charming. I'm acting whatever. I used to think that I had to entertain people. That awkward period for me, the awkward period, if I'm at somebody's house for dinner, or if they're at my house for dinner, after the meal and between that and the dessert, there's that awkward time. For me, it's awkward because I feel like I have to say witty things and entertain people and be something. I have to do something. Well, I finally figured out, and I didn't really figure this out. I don't have my own ideas anymore. But, all I decided to do was nothing and see how it went. And, everybody enjoyed themselves. They were chatting and listening, and I got to listen to all kinds of different conversations going on. They didn't need me to do anything. They didn't need me to do anything. And when I get confused, I just don't do anything. And it usually works out a lot better than if I had acted in a certain way. Now, on the downside of this, when I went back home, I used to go back home, see the folks. I always made sure to wear my suit of armor because I knew they were going to insult me. That was obvious before I even got there. I knew it was coming. So I would look for insults. And whatever they said, I could find an insult. If somebody, do you need butter for your toast? Are you calling me fat? I could make anything into a problem. And so as it turns out, I thought I was walking on eggshells around them, but they were walking on eggshells around me. And that makes me feel bad because that wasn't necessary. And when I started going home as a grown-up, none of that happened. None of that had to happen. So that was cool. Judge harshly what others think, say, or do. Yeah, if I want to be better than them, I have to judge them harshly. And also, I was always looking for insults. And when you seek, you will find. I would be outraged at some imagined wrong and tell my current sounding board how distressed I was so they would have sympathy for me. This worked with everyone except my sponsor. Now let me put this up real quick. There's when I put stop video on, take a look at what happens on this screen. This is my sponsor's face and that's my sponsor right there. She just sit there and go, oh, really? How about that? I could not excite her. I love that. She would just listen, and say, well, it's not really about the thing. Let's talk about the real problem. Wow. She's not listening to me, or she's really good at what she does. Avoid emotional, physical, or sexual intimacy as a way to maintain distance. I don't think this one resonates with me. Does anyone else have something they can contribute? Nothing came up for me on this one. Can somebody raise their hand and tell me how they see this one? Avoid emotional, physical, or sexual intimacy as a way to maintain distance. I was always the one sitting in the back pocket of people. I was like a barnacle. I do know that when you're acting a part, when you're playing a role, that's a good point. I have something for you. It's called the feelings wheel. This was brought up by someone else, and I immediately grabbed it and grabbed a copy off the internet. This is really cool for people who are having a hard time describing what they're feeling. Where is it? There it is. Okay. I'm socially inept, or I feel like I am socially inept. So the easiest way for me is to just put my attention somewhere else, read a book, bring a phone, do something like that, pretend you're busy on your phone. So that was sort of an avoidance maneuver for me. I was something to hide behind. And I'm really conscious of that now. So I know when I'm doing it, and I try not to do that anymore. But yeah, that's sort of my safety zone. It's like a blanket that you carry around that you don't need anymore. Not good at that. And I'm actually, what I learned about that, Yvette, is that I don't have to be socially adept. I can just listen, and it's okay. You know what's weird about that? And I found this out when I was dealing with the sponsee who was, she was upset because her husband had not come up and given her a hug when she was upset. And I said, well, maybe that's not the way he gets comforted. Maybe that's not the way he goes about it, because she was thinking, why wouldn't he come up and hug me when he knows that's what I need? Because that's what everybody needs. That's not true. So there's a lot to this. That's a really good point. Thanks for bringing that up. The different love languages that was mentioned earlier, people have different ways of feeling loved. So now here's that feelings wheel I told you about. I forget where I got this, but it was on a workshop. And you start in the middle and then go outwards. And it really helps you narrow down what's going on. That is cool. If anybody wants a copy, or I could just send you the copy. I don't remember the website. I'm going to put my email in chat to everyone. Can I do that? Yes. Okay. Right. Yeah, it's really nice because sad, it's a sad feeling. I'm feeling sad. Well, that's a cover word for lonely, vulnerable, despair, guilty, depressed, or hurt. That's a lot of different stuff right there that's under the umbrella of sadness.
Mhm.
And if you're feeling despair, is it grief or powerlessness? It's really specific. I love this one. Let me type in my email real quick. Make sure I have this right. And I will send you a copy of that or whatever else I happen to come up with. Okay, where am I at? Let's go back. Here we are. And allow addictions to people, places, and things to distract them from achieving intimacy in relationships. This is an interesting one. I had to think about this. An addiction to a person is different from a real relationship. Had to really look into this, found a lot of cool stuff, but it is similar to an addiction to alcohol, drugs, overeating, over shopping, overworking, over anything. If you are addicted to another person, that's the only thing that matters. That's what you think about all the time. Everything else takes a back seat. They become the higher power. And it really is the same as when I was drinking. Nothing else mattered but the getting the alcohol, consuming the alcohol, covering up the alcohol, getting some more alcohol, going to work to make the money to get some more alcohol. It's all about alcohol. That's my whole world revolved around that. If you're addicted to a person, it's not a real relationship. Usually, if you're addicted to a person, they're not even in it. You are. You're given 100% and they're given maybe 10 just to keep you around. That's not a real relationship. It's got to be equal. Yeah, to me, when I found that out, it meant that I had to stop trying to fix other people so they could make me happy. I had to make myself happy. Well, how am I going to do that? That's a tall order. I don't even know what makes me happy. And I'll tell you what I did about that was trial and error. I started doing things that I had only talked about before, I thought might be slightly interesting, just to see who I was. I went camping again. Do I actually hate camping, or was it the people I was with? Turns out it was the people I was with, my family of origin. Duh. So there are a lot of things that I lied to myself about. They weren't true. It's a full-time job, especially if you've got that chaos that Kenneth was talking about. You've got things to think about, and you've got to manipulate people. And say, if he says this, I'm going to say that. And if I didn't have my own drama, I would borrow somebody else's and talk about that and worry about that. So yeah, that's when I finally got sober and started getting serenity. I called it boredom. It was actually, I was just serene for a change. I wasn't bored. I just didn't have anything to go to on. One of my sponsees told me she was busy pursuing relentlessly pursuing the unhappiness. No, wait a minute. The pursuit of unhappiness. Yes. She was busy relentlessly pursuing the pursuit of unhappiness. Good for you, honey. Gotta have something to do, right? She needs a new hobby. I mentioned it. Okay. Practicing these patterns is a full-time job. It's, you just don't have any time for yourself. I used all of these patterns at different times and to useless effect. Okay, use indirect or evasive communication to avoid conflict or confrontation. Sure, vagueness is my favorite form of misdirection. The silent treatment qualifies here, telling everyone but the person involved that you disagree. I was getting a posse together so they could disagree with you against this person. Very nice. Vagueness. Yeah, let's get together sometime. Yeah. Diminish their capacity to have healthy relationships by declining to use the tools of recovery. Once a year, I do this. About once a year, and I'm getting so much better at this. It used to be once a week. But about once a year, I will stand my ground on something because I'm right, you're wrong. Dang it, I'm not calling my sponsor. I'm not talking to my higher power, not using the program. No, I will not do a 4-step thank you because I'm right and I know I'm right. That's it. And so about once a year, I get stuck in that. And then it takes me maybe, I'd say 2 days max now because I'm uncomfortable. I don't like that negative excitement anymore. I don't like the way that feels. So I climb my way out of it. And it takes maximum of 2 days because I have the choice of being unhappy, but I don't have to be. So I know what to do when I'm upset. Sometimes it feels so good to be upset I don't do any of the things I know how to do. It's like sitting in the puddle of my own making, is the way I describe it. You know, sit there as long as you want, take a nice warm bath. That's whatever you need to do. Oops, okay. Suppress their feelings or needs to avoid feeling vulnerable. Oh, yes. I think it's called biting your tongue. And this is supposed to create martyrdom. It doesn't, but it's supposed to. Back when I was sleeping with married men, I would tell people that I like this relationship because it makes me happy because I don't want to be married anyway, and blah, blah, blah. I was lying about that, but it was a way for me to just, I like it this way. It's ridiculous. And again, I apologize to all the married women. And again, if you have anything you want to say, we're a little bit running out of time, so I want to kind of rush through the last ones. Pull people toward them, but when others get close, push them away. And I kept saying that I wanted a close relationship, the ones that you see on Valentine's Day with the husband and wife sitting there toasting each other, and the flowers are on the table and the steaks coming and all that, and they're so much in love, and it looked really good. But that's what I said I wanted, but I also feared it, obviously. If they knew who I really was, they wouldn't want to have anything to do with me. So if I keep them just a little bit apart enough, then I don't have to worry about that. It's okay. Refuse to give up their self-will to avoid surrendering to a power greater than themselves. Had a terrible time with this. 12 and a half years into sobriety, my sponsor told me that she wasn't an alcoholic after all and fired me, said she had fired everybody. And so I had to get a new sponsor. And when I did, she said, okay, I will sponsor you, but you're going to need to do this, 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 and this. And I want you to go to CODA. I was like, oh, she tricked me. Okay. So that's how I got into CODA. And where was I going? Oh, no. Refusing to give up. Oh, yeah, their higher power. So once I got into CODA, we did ACA first and then CODA, and I started questioning everything. That's what my sponsor told me. Question everything you think you know, especially if you really think you know it, question it. And I started looking at other religions and Eastern religions and asking people about their higher power. And I got one that really, really works for me. And I don't feel ashamed or judged, all the time. Let's see. And, it reminds me of an old joke. Okay, refuse to give up their self-will to avoid surrendering to a power greater than themselves. I wanted to know what was going to be demanded of me before I gave myself away. And that reminded me of a t-shirt that says, first show me the candy, then I'll get in the van. I'm not stupid. That's funny. I love that. Okay. So, believe displays of emotion are a sign of weakness. I don't think that, so I cannot speak to this one. Can anybody help on this one? Does anybody have something here? Yeah, I remember that. I remember from childhood, we were not allowed to have emotions. If we got really happy and loud, that was bad. If we got sad about something, what's your problem? It was just best to be silent and go hide somewhere. Avoidance was my thing. Okay, last one. Withhold expressions of appreciation. And I did not compliment other people because if I did, it was bringing myself down somehow. It was taking me down a notch if I put them up a notch. That sounds silly, but I think that's the way I saw it at that time. So, and that is the end. We've got about 10 more minutes for Q&A if anybody has anything they want to share. And I really appreciate the fill-ins for me because I couldn't come up with a couple of those. Appreciate it. It is, Dwayne, and I had that experience as well. And I'll tell you, the shame problem for me is that I was getting something out of it. I was gleaning his attention. I didn't want that kind of attention, but I was getting attention. The rest of the time I didn't exist. So that was my shame in the whole thing. And the only time I told on him, I had 3 other sisters that took us in age order. I had 2 sisters below me. I didn't say anything because I thought I was special. I thought I was the only one. And once I figured out that he was doing maybe somebody else, I got jealous and turned him in. That's the truth. Didn't make me look very good, but there it is. And that time also, like I said, I'm 67. We didn't talk about those things. It wasn't happening to anybody but me. What happened later and how I used that as an adult, that's my responsibility, because that stuff isn't happening anymore. So what I do now, that's for me. Yeah, it's a lot of gray area in CODA. It's different from the other programs. You're either drinking or you're not drinking. So you're either successful or not successful, but CODA's got a lot of weird gray stuff. And the more you practice it, the more you will not be uncomfortable. Just practice, 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 practice. And I actually decide that I'm going to let myself be uncomfortable. I get choices. That's all I have today. Thank you so much, everybody. We got through it. Woohoo!
Thank you, Karen.
You're very welcome.